take a minute here to set up. Can you grab the stuff out? Tonight is actually going to be probably one of my first lessons that I taught in the youth class. And it was actually while I was still a student in the youth class that one day God had put this on my heart. And I had taught it. That had probably been 12 plus years ago at this point. That I'm going to take a minute here real quick just to get it set up. So Sam, if you want to come up front here tonight. But tonight, the text that I want to be talking out of is Matthew chapter 6. And I'm going to read verse 5 and 6. And when thou prayest, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are, for they love to pray standing in synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and the Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. And tonight, real simple message, but I want to talk on cleaning out my closet. Cleaning out my closet. Brother Mosier, would you pray? So tonight, as I'm a nerd here, but the Webster's app says that a closet can be defined as an apartment or a small room for privacy, a cabinet or recess, especially china, household utensils, or clothing, or a place of retreat or privacy. And so I know I've talked in class before, and I've talked about the fact that I still remember, even as a grown man, I've treated my closet still as kind of that place that, oh man, people are coming over, and kind of kick it in there and I can close the door. That's where I can hide my stuff at, where not everybody has to be able to see it. But as a young person, I probably, my mom would be the first one to tell you of the fact that she'd clean mine out and she would find candy wrappers and from candy that I wasn't necessarily supposed to have as a young kid, in the sense that I never asked her for it. There might have been empty pop cans, because around my house we weren't necessarily allowed to drink much pop, but don't give away all my secrets to my boys. But, I still used to go away and get a hold of some stuff. And hiding the evidence, it would go in my locker. Now, or in my locker in my closet. Now, the closet was that place where, Mar's mom went. That's where my shoes went. It's where my clothes would be at. But I'm not talking about that kind of closet tonight. Tonight I'm talking about that place, as it's talking about that place of privacy, that place of security, that place you can go to. God, when he was speaking in those scriptures, he said, but what thou, not as the hypocrites do. You're not out for a show to show your worship and your prayer. But he said, thou, you're to enter into your closet. You're to enter into that private place, that secret, that secure place. And you to shut the door behind you. That's that place that you can shut everything else off. But oftentimes I found my prayer closet begin to spill out of my, having an awful lot of stuff that seemed to be in the way. Now, believe it or not, this is the football I used to use a lot growing up. And believe me, all the little nicks and things in there aren't necessarily just from sitting in a garage and being mistreated. But this ball was one that I kicked a lot. I kicked it on pavement. I ran with it. My brother would throw routes to me. Not that I was a good kicker, not that I was going to be a punter or a very good one, but there was time when the team needed a punter, so I was going to do what it took to try to help the team win. So if that meant I learned how to kick a ball, I was going to do it. I wanted the team to win. Believe it or not, my junior year, or the team that went 1-9, I was determined it was going to be better my senior year. So I was the one that would put in the extra running. It wasn't practice. It was summertime. I got out and I ran myself. Even my dad looked at me sometimes just shaking his head because it was hot. But I knew and I was determined my senior year we were not going to be 1-9. So I spent a lot of time there that may have been in my closet, getting away from things. And baseball, that was one I probably played for somewhere close to 15 years of my life. 15 summers my parents had dedicated to us to be able that we run us to ballparks, to practices, to all-star games. I played a lot of baseball. Matter of fact, I wouldn't say I was great, but I made the all-stars more than a few times. Till my 13-year-old year, one year, actually I guess it was my 14-year-old year, I had a coach come up to me and they were getting ready to select the all-star team, and they said, hey, we're getting ready to make selections, but I wanted to ask you one thing there, Jake. Are you going to leave for a week like you did last year and go to church camp? And I said, well, yes, Coach, I sure am. He said, even if it's in the middle of All-Stars? I said, yeah, it's always been in the middle of All-Stars. He said, even if that means you don't get to play, if we don't pick you to be, I said, I'm going to church camp. That was the one place that I'd already found at 9 years old, that there was an altar there. There was God's presence that I had never felt like that before. I was surrounded by other young people that were right there to worship in the same. There were some pretty ladies down there. There was softball. There was fun to be had, and I loved what I felt when I went there. That I played baseball enough during the summer that what was a couple extra weeks, I didn't care if I got to play. But it still took up room in my closet. Now, I'm starting to show my age here, Lucas, okay? I know you may not understand what this is right here, but this is what we call a textbook, okay? But believe it or not, we used to have one of these for every subject in school, okay? No, that's my fundamentals of nursing right there for Monette. But spent enough money for those that I figured I'm keeping some of them around. But we used to carry books for all of our classes. My parents were parents that had high expectations for me for school. I had proved that I could perform to a certain level, so then they expected a certain level. And while each level may be different for each child, that was to where they had come and what they did. So I had spent a lot of times where it may have been a lot of procrastination, but I spent a lot of time still working on my homework late at night. I didn't miss church because of it, but I can't say that I had never spent a time back in the kitchen one time doing some homework that I had put off for a project that I had had for 3 weeks. Oh School is important, but it also was just another thing in my closet. I got my little remote here from our Roku there, because nowadays that's what my TV consists of, is a little streaming thing. But spent a lot of times, I can remember, we were just joking about it today, getting body slammed by my brother. We'd watch a little WCW Nitro, and Sister Howard can attest to some of the things that I learned from watching wrestling. But the reality there, me and Big Bob always used to ask us, what do you think about Sting? What do you think about Hulk Hogan? He was always one that would get us going. But again, TV took up room in my closet. And as we look around nowadays, we can spend a whole lot of time that young people tend to get caught away up into their ear pods. There are now AirPods that don't even have cords. This is a little more old school. Yep, those are wires, Lucas. But, we can get caught away and spend so much time just listening to our music. And I've got my fishing tackle, and I've got my basketball that my dad was always brutally honest and told me I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a basketball goal. But kids in the neighborhood, that was still a game that we all picked up and played. And I've got my PlayStation controller here where I'd be the first one to admit I like sitting down and playing a little bit of Call of Duty or something that a lot of people play. And I got my guitar here this is probably the only guitar I could play, Brother Mosier. It's for a video game, but it's still my guitar, that I could play. And I got, look at that. Some Snapchat, everybody loves to play with those filters. Got a little bit of TikTok. Everybody and their mother is now doing some dances of some sort on there. Facebook, I think just about everybody's got a little bit of Facebook now, no matter the age there, because you can always go and find a group, whether you're talking about gun lovers or knitting and crocheting, or whether you're talking about politics, whatever. There's something on there for everybody. And for some of the folks behind you, this would be called Tweeter, okay? But they love with the Twitter there, and there's all this social media that can eat up your time in an instant. I've talked to the young people before of the fact of how quickly I can go down the rabbit hole of watching one video to the next, to the next, to the next. The next thing you know, you thought you were just watching a 5-minute cat video or something about a new fishing lure. Next thing you know, you've been already watched about 4 15-minute videos, and you just lost an hour. And you didn't even realize it. So as you look through that prayer closet that God had told me that I was to enter into, and that I was going to pray and I was going to talk to him in, it seems awfully crowded, don't it? Kind of, come to find my way to the altar, and boy, I might just trip up a little bit when I got all this stuff a mess in my closet in there. Now, none of these things are bad. I mean, they can be trouble. Be smart when you're on your social media. Be careful what you're watching. Be careful what you're posting and what you're allowed to go on in the, what are they calling now, the DMs. Be careful what you're allowing to come before yourselves, but you can still have fun with the filters, and you can still have fun watching the videos and learning things. Bang Bang Flavor Gang, I'm watching the guy smoking brisket and everything else on TikTok and sitting there getting hungry. I'd be the first one to admit you can have some fun on those things, but there still has to be organization. There still has to be priority. And so, while I love to fish, I wish I was as good as Brother Essen. Doubt it. But the fact that I was called to be a fisher of men. So while that's important to get away every once in a while, have some of the quiet time, it's still not going to be my main thing. And young people, while I would always encourage you, do your studies, do your homework, be disciplined in those things. I want you to get accepted to whatever job that you're wanting. I want you to be accepted into whatever college or trade school or whatever route that you take. I want you to be educated. But understand, I'm more worried about, are you going to be accepted into heaven than I am that college. I'm more worried about what your lifetime goal in the afterlife is going to be more than your short period here. And while it's fun to have some of the sports, and I enjoy playing those things, and I love a good time, there's still got to have time for that. But that can't be what takes up all my life. And while I need a little fun, and it's good to learn and to be social, and you can use it to witness, that social media is not that important. It doesn't need to have place in my closet with God. Well, I like the video games, and music is great, and you can say, well, I was listening to Todd Delaney, and I was listening to IBC or POA, or I was listening to great music. I wasn't listening to bad music, Brother Jake. You're right. That's great, and I applaud you, encourage you. Find you some good, wholesome, good Christian gospel music, whatever it's going to be that's going to put you into a place to worship him and have your mind set on him. But music will never replace worship. Music will never replace that time in prayer with him. You still got to find it. So while that still can't be, and I know that we watch TV, well, I watch the news. That's great. I'm glad you try to stay up to date, but I'm not consumed with it to the point of where I'm looking to it more than I'm looking to God. And next thing you know is I start realizing, and I start putting priorities on things, and I realize that some of these things are not near as important when you're talking about eternity, that as I start to clean everything out, now I'm getting real close. So now I'm sitting here and I've got the closet ready. Now I put those things where they belong, okay? I didn't just kick them back out in the room. But I'm found in that place now that I've got room, that when I shut that door, I can start focusing on one thing. When I've closed that door and I've begun to get everything else that's been just a what would you want to call it, a parasite of my time, of something that's just been a blockage of my time and that's been wasting it, that it may be a good time and it may even be something that I need to put my focus and my time into, but I also need to understand that I've got to have my focus and my time upon him. He looked at his disciples and said, could you tarry with me for an hour? Just an hour. Now you think, man, that's a lot, but I just told you four or five videos on Facebook or in that time. You could have been an hour. Went through, and one television show's the shortest amount is still 30 minutes. And so I begin to think, God, am I getting my focus where it needs to be? Because when I begin to bring my focus in reminding myself of that cross that he went to, the time that he spent on that, surely I can begin to find a place that I can spend some time with him. Because the Bible says that he that dwelleth in the secret place. I'm going to dwell there. That means I'm going to spend some time. That doesn't mean I'm just passing through. I'm going to spend some time here. I'm going to take my time. I'm not putting any limits as to when or how long God's got before he's going to move or I'm going to leave. But I'm sitting and I'm going to find that place kneeled before him. It may be at the side of your bed. It may be on the couch. It may be in the vehicle. It may be in the shower. I don't know. But I'm going to find that place where all of a sudden I can shut everything else behind me. And I can begin to put my focus on him. And I can begin to pray. Acknowledging when it says that when I dwell in that place, when he that dwelleth in the secret place. That closet was that secret, that private place. When I begin to dwell in that place with him and I spend that time with him, it says that I would abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I'm gonna live in the shadow. That means I'm going to be close to him. If you're in your shadow, you're going to be close. And I'm going to be under him. And under him means I've got the safety of his wings. I've got the safety of his hand on my life. I'm right there underneath, but I've got to spend some time with him. That when I've got everything else that I could clear out, and I've got my priorities set, and I begin to focus on him, the blessings that he pours out, because it says that he that sees in secret will bless you openly. In other words, I don't have to go tell anybody that I've been praying about this or praying about that, or how I've been spending, I spent an extra hour in prayer this week. God sees it, and God will bless. God will move. God will reward. But we've got to understand that we've got to get those things out of our way. So when you come through and, you know, the kids, we had them take a slip of paper and on that write down something topics that they wanted us to talk about in class. That if it was either a topic that they were embarrassed or shy to bring up, maybe it was one that they didn't even want to talk to necessarily their parents about, but they had questions. That we're the youth leaders. That's what we're there for. And but whatever the topic may be, but I think every kid wrote down one particular topic. And in a roundabout way, they all said, how do you get closer to God? Well, young people, here's the best way to start. Now see, the world will tell you that when you're down on your knees, that's weak. They'll tell you that's not the place to be. But he said that in my weakness, he would be strong. So in my place, even in my thing, I'll be flat on my face if that's what it's going to take to get to the Spirit of God. If that's what it's going to take to get to the place where I'm saying, God, I need you. If you want to be closer, God, I want to be closer to you. God, I know that I was willing to give whatever it took on a football field. God, I was willing to do whatever the studies it took to do well on that test. But God, I'll do whatever it takes to make it to heaven. The young people, you come through and you begin to ask, well, I want direction. How do I get direction? It's right here. It just seems like cloth. But it's that altar that when you begin to find that place, you're going to find the direction that you want right here. When you have questions that you need answers, this is where you're going to find them. When you don't know where else to go, you don't know what else to do, this is where you're going to find it. When you're asked and you're stuck with the questions of why did this happen to me, you can find it right here. When you don't know what to pray, what to ask, just being quiet in that place. But we got to get to the place that we have everything cleared out, that we understand that I can't allow that to be what costs me. If I asked you, would you allow that money that you want to work so hard for to cost you from heaven, what would you say? If you said, oh, I can't go, and I can't be at church tonight, or I can't pray tonight because I've got my homework. Again, it's important, but my priorities. Get it done. But maybe it's one of those late nights, or what was you doing before church? Was you praying before church? Well, I can't seem to ever find myself when I'm in church to be able to ever get into his presence the way I want to. I want the Holy Ghost, or I want to be closer to him, but are you willing to put in the sacrifice? You do it once, But you'll find that no matter, even as you get older, the things that may fill your closet may change. But they're still there. Every once in a while, we'll still lose track of those priorities every once in a while. That even as an adult, it's hard to think of myself that way most of the time, but even as an adult, I begin to realize that I can let things begin to get in my way. I begin to allow things to fill my time to the point of where, I've got that 10 minutes to pray. Young people, it's to start now to get in that habit of that I can clear everything out. That yes, I still got to do this. I still want to have some fun with that. But God, before I do any of that, I want to spend some time with you. God, before I go to school. Lord, before I go to bed at night. God, before, whatever it is, God, I want your hand to be in it. So God, I'm going to find some time to talk to you. You want to get closer to him? Prayer. You want healing? It's prayer. You want direction? You want to understand where God's wanting to lead you in life? You got to communicate. You got to talk to him. It's all in the prayer. You're going to find that even as adults, you may look and you may think that your parents, they just always got the answers. There was different times that I never understood just how much time that my parents might spend in prayer. They didn't have the answers. God would just lead them along the way. People, this is your connection. This is that private place. This is that place where it's for nobody but you and God. That closet, that prayer closet, that's that place to be with him that you can find what you need of. But we got to make sure we clean out our closet. Keep it swept out. Keep it clear to the point of, God, there's nothing that I'm going to allow to be between me and you. You're getting to the ages, and for Lucas, for you, Bub, there's going to be so many things that as you get a little bit older in school, as things come, that responsibility comes, but there also comes a lot of freedom sometimes with those responsibilities. That means some of those friends that you have at school aren't going to be making the choices that you know you ought to make. So you got to be able to know and have that strength and allow God to direct you in making those decisions for yourself to stand when nobody else does. And you're going to find it in prayer. As you guys have gotten older, you realize that just because maybe it's not in a classroom setting anymore at work, whether it's dealing with your boss or dealing with just people in general, there's going to be things that's going to grind your gears. You're going to realize that not everybody is nice. You're going to realize that as it comes in that there's a struggle sometimes. And there's going to be times that you may look and you think, but what is my next step? I remember my senior year of high school, that when it finally hit me and I realized that from the time I was 4 that I said I was going to be a veterinarian, to now I'm getting into the second semester, the end half of my senior year, and I realized I don't want to be a veterinarian anymore. Boy, you want to talk about not having a clue of what I wanted to do or where I was headed. I thought from the time I was Joe's age and even knew that there was a doctor for animals, I was going to be an animal doctor. But it spent a lot of time in prayer. And it was a lot of time of prayer, of asking God, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And you know, it wasn't that he told me an audible decision that this is where you're going to go. Instead, he put people in my life that he began to say, somebody actually mentioned one time of nursing, and I don't think that's for me. She said, well, what is it about veterinarian that you wanted to be? And I said, well, really, I just wanted to do surgery. That was why I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to be able to work on the animals. They didn't talk, and I could do a little fun science on them, really. Obviously take care of them, and I always enjoyed pets, but that was what I wanted. And she said, so you like the surgery part? And I said, well, yeah. She said, you know they got nurses in surgery, right? And I went, huh? Mind blown. What? And they go to sleep and they don't talk. I mean, it's one of those, I like people for short bits of periods, and I'm good with them. But then I love the OR. But I loved the OR. But as it come through, of that was God just beginning to put people in my life that, and for the record, that wasn't Monette. That was one of my teachers at high school. Monette has encouraged me many a times through the years, but that conversation was with a high school teacher. But I began to realize that the voice that God may have is not the same necessarily at all times, because I've never can say I've heard audible voice of God. But I can tell you there's been a lot of times he sounded, for some reason, a lot like Brother Mosier. There's been times that the voice of God has sounded like my mom and dad even when I didn't want to hear it. It sounded like Brother Hall when sometimes me and him would get into conversations. It's amazing how there would be different people. I can tell you, if I'd looked at saints that are no longer here. It could have been Brother Rudolph when he put his arm around my shoulder, and most of the time it scoot over here, boy, I want to put my arm around you. So I scoot closer, and he'd put my arm around you, and he'd say, boy, you know you're going to make it if you just keep praying like that. The voice of God sounds a little different from time to time, but if you're listening, you'll hear it. But this is my communication. When I'm praying, that's when I'm finding place, because God, I want to be in that secret place that I can abide under the shadow, it says, of the Almighty. This is my access. That throne, that cross that he went to gave me access to that altar. It gave me access that when I can go to him and I can begin to seek his faces. And even starting that you may say, well, I don't know what to say. There's no way I can fill an hour. There's no way. Well, we can spend a lot of time complaining. Sometimes God even just wants to hear the complaints, if that means that's what's going to get you talking. I went to him, and there's times that's all I was doing, and I started out as I was complaining to him. But as I begin to complain, next thing you know, I'm also beginning to think of, but man, I'm actually blessed. So then that complaining and the realization that I was blessed turned into thanksgiving. Because I realized that while I may have been complaining because that wasn't what I wanted or how I wanted it to be, I was blessed that I even had that situation to begin with. When I'm complaining because I'm having hamburger instead of steak. I had food to put in my belly. When I'm complaining that, man, my car just didn't run as smooth as I want it to be. It's running. It's warm inside. We're cool. I complain that things don't go in the timing that I want. And to be honest with you, one of the things we were a little concerned about at first with our whole sewage thing tonight. My pump went out. My septic tank, it's weird setup, but it's got a pump in it. My pump went out yesterday morning. Well, I'll put it this way. We woke up yesterday morning to a breaker blown because the water had risen so high the alarm hadn't went off, and it fried because water got to electrical stuff. It was that high up in the system that it should have never been there. And it was just last week that we found out he was coming to dig. It was in God's timing. Because a week later, and we could have had a whole lot bigger of a mess than what we're dealing with. But it was a lot of praying. I can spend a lot of time, and my wife can agree, and my dad would probably laugh a little bit, if I can spend a lot of time out on the water sitting on the shore and never catch a fish that you might look at and say it was wasted time, but I still enjoyed myself. But reality, I can waste a lot of time on that shore and have nothing to show for it. Any time you spend in prayer, never a waste. Any time that you spend in prayer, you may not see the exact results in that moment, but it's never wasted. This is a place that should be sacred to you. This is a place that there's no room for anything else. It doesn't matter how pretty she is or how handsome he is. They don't have room to take up space in your prayer closet. It doesn't matter how much you want to maybe have your name out there on social media, or to be popular, to be famous from those things and making the great money from YouTube videos. I'm more worried about is your name known by him. Doesn't matter if I have 50,000 followers on one account or whatever. I want to know, does he know my name? Because the reality is, yeah, you can know his name, but he's got to know yours. And this is how you get to know him. And this is how he gets to know your voice. I want him to know my voice. I want him to know that when I cry out, Jesus, that he can say, there's Jake calling me. That when you call out, he's going to say, Lucas, yeah, that's right. I hear you. Don't worry, I've got you. But there's nothing in this that I want except God's presence. I'm always going to cut out a block of time. Young people, find you a set time sometime. Daniel prayed thrice. He prayed 3 times. Set yourself a time. Do you not set a time to, if it was the TV show, do you not make sure you sit there at 7 o'clock or whatever when that show plays? You set a time to, most of us are set a time to somewhat of when we're going to eat. You set a time as to whatever, when you're going to wake up or this, that, and the other. Then set it a little bit earlier so that you got time to wake up and you've got time to pray. Make sure that you set, whether it be, I usually go to bed and we'll say at 10 o'clock, then I'm going to set time at 8 o'clock. That I'm going to find time to pray. Before I go to my friend's house, before I go to do it, I'm going to find time to make sure that I have had my time in communication with him. So young people and adults alike tonight, if you would stand. There's always times that we allow ourselves to be distracted from what's really important. And sometimes we allow things to fill spaces in our and spots in our lives that shouldn't be there. And we begin to lose that same fervor. We begin to lose that same desire to make sure that we spend that time. Tonight, before you leave, we need to find a time to and find a place tonight that we can clean out that closet. To understand that God, right now, if there's ever a time that I need to be praying, God, this is a time that I need to be praying. God, if there's ever a time that I need to be more dedicated, if there's ever a time that I need to draw nearer to you, Lord, this is that time. You want to be closer? You want to draw closer to him? Clean out your closet. You want to find wisdom? You want to find direction? Clean out your closet. And just see what kind of changes begin to happen in life when you begin to shift that focus to him and not on what's around you. There's enough going on with everything else around us right now. But if we get our focus on him,